Shit, I just pressed the wrong button on my phone, so it looks like this is going to be a two-part video. Fuck. Okay, yeah, but Jerusalem, um, very interesting city from a historical perspective because of its role in the three Abrahamic religions. There's still plenty of both Islamic and Christian architecture. Honestly, Jewish architecture, not so much. They don't really have that much historic architecture there. The only thing that's really historic of theirs there is the Western Wall itself. Like most of the stuff they built is more modernist, kind of like a lot of this, like the Jewish, from what I've seen of the historic city of Jerusalem, which is really the most interesting part, is the walled historic city. The Jewish quarter seems to have the least historic architecture. I think it's because there was the most heavy fighting there during the, I guess, was it the 6 Day War, or was it the Israeli War of Independence, whatever, one of their wars. And yeah, a lot of it was leveled, and then they replaced it with this kind of like this sort of like uncanny valley fake historic architecture. Ironically, not so different from German cities. There's definitely some irony there. But yeah, the Jewish quarter has that vibe too. So that's probably the least architecturally interesting part of the old city. I would say the Muslim I think they call it like the Christian quarter and the Armenian quarter, even though Armenians are a type of Christian. But yeah, those are the three other quarters of the historic city, and I think those are more historically well preserved. But yeah, there's a lot of like very narrow kind of medieval type architecture in the historic city of Jerusalem, at least the three quarters other than the Jewish quarter. And there's the Dome of the Rock, which is quite beautiful, but again, they don't let non-Muslims go in there anymore, although I don't know how easy it is to get in by pretending to be a Muslim. How easily can they spot you that way? I don't know. But yeah, I'd say that is the most beautiful building in Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock, both interior and exterior, from what I've seen of it. Actually, my parents did get to go inside because the Muslims were less strict back then. That was back in the 80s. So yeah, definitely quite gorgeous. And now the Jews are, of course, threatening to destroy it. So I think that's part of the reason why they're not letting people in. But again, it's a bit unfair because it's like, it's not Christians. Although then again, some of these Texas rednecks who go to fucking Israel and LARP as Israelis, these fucking kosher cowboys on the Wild West bank. These these people are so cringe. I fucking hate them. These Texas rednecks who go to Israel and LARP on the settlements there in the West Bank. These are like the cringiest people on the entire planet. But yeah, with the heifer cost, with the red heifers. But yeah, I mean, honestly, despite all the things that I hate about Israel, I will concede Jerusalem is a very historically interesting city. I wish it wasn't part of the state of Israel. I wish that Jerusalem could be its own like Singapore style state or something like that. I don't know. Because I don't want to go to Israel, but I do want to go to Jerusalem. That's kind of the thing. Yeah, I mean, and also, like outside of the walled city, there is some stuff on the to the east, like Gethsemane and the Mount of Olives. There's a few historic Christian churches, the Russian church, that's quite beautiful, and the other one in Gethsemane. But yeah, I mean, within the historic walled city, there's the walls themselves, the gates. Some of the gates are quite impressive. I'm not sure who built them. I think they might be Ottoman, but I'm not entirely sure. And then as far as Christian architecture goes, there is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is very historic, quite an interesting building, demonstrating a range of architectural styles. I still think the Dome of the Rock is the most beautiful building in Jerusalem, but I think from a Christian perspective, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is definitely the most important building in Jerusalem. And the most historic Christian building there. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting history in Jerusalem, and with the different religious groups, it's definitely quite an eclectic mix and definitely an uneasy mix. And yeah, it's a city I would like to go to, but I feel like I probably won't. Not in this lifetime, because like with Moscow and St. Petersburg, I would gladly go there if diplomatic relations were a bit better. But I don't even know if they're letting in Canadians into Russia right now. But regardless, even if they were, my concern would be, would they let me into other Western countries when they see Russia on my passport? That would be the fucking big concern. But yeah, with Jerusalem, on the other hand, it's that I literally don't want to give the Israeli state my money, so I would feel morally opposed to going there. But even if they would let me in, and then it's like when I get there, it's like, would I even be able to get into the Dome of the Rock because I'm not Muslim? So, and Al Aqsa Mosque. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, unfortunately, that would make me not go to Jerusalem, even though it's such an interesting place. But yes, I will concede it is one of the most interesting cities in the world from a historic standpoint, and just that eclectic mix, I think, makes it very interesting. And again, this is a list of most interesting cities, not necessarily most beautiful cities. There's a lot of cities that are very beautiful, but they're just not as like weird or eclectic or interesting in that sense. So that's why I'm putting these cities on this list. Number 5 is Cape Town, South Africa. And I think what makes Cape Town interesting is that it's kind of like a national park within a city. Like it has these beautiful mountains with great hiking trails that are surrounded by the city. It's not really the city itself that is as interesting as the natural aspects of it. And again, unfortunately, the urban aspects of it make the natural aspects more dangerous, because unlike most hiking trails, it's not animals you have to watch out for. In Cape Town, it's other people. Specifically people of the what they would call either black or colored persuasion, because in South Africa the word colored has a different meaning. It's a different ethnic group from blacks. But yes, both of these groups have a very high crime rate in South Africa, and yeah, South Africa overall does have a very high crime rate. And unfortunately, that's a concern there. Otherwise, though, it's extremely gorgeous, though. Like the natural scenery there is superbly gorgeous. Now, the question is, would Cape Town be more beautiful if it hadn't been a city, if it had been just left as a national park? I'd say probably yes. I think it would have been better to just leave it untouched. But nonetheless, it is still quite gorgeous because the natural scenery is just so astounding. And very unique also. Like I'd say it's a bit different from the type of scenery you see anywhere. Like I'd say Table Mountain is kind of unique on a global scale, in the sense of being this like massive table shaped mountain. But yeah, some of the most gorgeous scenery in the entire planet. And it would be nice to go to, but I'm a bit worried about the crime. Also, the driving there is very dangerous, so that's another factor. But yeah, I don't know. Will I ever get there? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah. In this case, it's not diplomatic issues. It's it's dangerousness issues. I don't think there's much diplomatic issues with getting into South Africa. It's more, will you get out? Will you survive the experience? And next on the list at number 4 is a city that's very similar to Cape Town, but on another continent, which is Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Much like Cape Town, it's also very beautiful, not so much architecturally as naturally. Very gorgeous mountain scenery that is surrounded by a city that is very unique, but also very dangerous for similar reasons. Crime and also bad drivers. But to be fair, at least in Rio, there's good public transit, which is more than you can say for Cape Town. But yeah, Rio de Janeiro, much like Cape Town, very, very unique scenery, gorgeous mountain scenery, like Sugarloaf Mountain in particular, but the other mountains in the city as well. Much like Cape Town, I do question, would it have been better if they just left it as a national park? I'd say yes, but nonetheless, despite that, it's still very beautiful, but fuck the crime. It's such a problem there. Yeah, but very beautiful scenery, and I think that's one thing that makes it very unique, is just it has landscapes that look very distinct, that are different from anywhere else on the planet. And like the way the mountains look with like Sugarloaf Mountain being this like interestingly shaped mountain that's like literally like a sugar loaf. And the other mountains in the city too, very beautiful. It's a very beautiful panorama, very beautiful landscape. It's a place I would like to go, but I'm hesitant because of the sketchiness. So I don't know, but it's a very beautiful city for that reason, very interesting and unique for that reason, much like Cape Town. So yeah, number, and I guess, okay, by the way, I should mention Cape Town. There's some beautiful architecture like in the Bo-Cap area that does have a distinct architectural style, but honestly it's not the selling feature of the city from a travel standpoint. It really is the nature, the natural scenery, the mountains. So yeah, both similar cities in that sense. Like, I would say, if anything, the human element of the city is actually a drawback. I would rather it be a national park in both cases because of like it would make it look more untouched, and also it would take away the severity of the sketchiness element. But nonetheless, that does make these cities interesting. So that's why they're on this list. As I said, like, I would rather they not be cities in the first place. I don't think they should have been cities. But nonetheless, they have to be on this list just because of the sheer how interesting it is, how beautiful they are, because of the natural scenery. So yeah. Number 3 on this list is what's pictured in this sketch painting reproduction that I have here, which is New Orleans. Now, I've already talked about New Orleans a lot in some of my other videos. I did a video specifically on it, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. Other than that, it's definitely the most European city in America. It's the most like Southern European, Mediterranean feeling city in America in terms of the architecture and the general vibe. It's very architecturally beautiful. As with some of the other cities on this list, it does have severe crime problems. Maybe not as severe as Rio or Cape Town, but still pretty severe by the standards of a first world city or even of an American city. It's pretty bad for crime, but nonetheless, it's very beautiful, very eclectic, and it does have its own interesting cultural heritage because of its association with jazz music. And it's very unique architectural style, which is like similar to Southern Europe, but puts its own specifically New Orleans spin on it. And yeah, especially the French Quarter, but also some of the surrounding areas too, like the Marigny and the lower Garden District. Yeah, some very Treme, some very interesting neighborhoods also. I'd kind of recommend the show Treme as a side note, but it's also kind of boring. But it's like, if you're really interested in New Orleans, I'd recommend checking out this show. But if you're not super interested in New Orleans, you might find it boring. But yeah, I definitely recommend going to the city of New Orleans if you're not afraid of the sketchiness factor. Also, yeah, bad drivers down south too. Like, the states with the highest murder rates are often the states with the highest car accident death rates also. So yeah, delicious food, although definitely not particularly healthy, but very delicious food. Um, but yeah, it's a very interesting city to visit. Not a place I'd particularly want to live, but very interesting to visit. So second on the list is Istanbul, and I also did a video on this city, so I won't talk about it too much, but I'll say what makes Istanbul interesting is the East meets West vibe of the architecture and of the general vibe the city has, the food, the architecture, really everything about it. Very unique city. Some of the historic buildings are like astonishingly gorgeous, like the Hagia Sophia, the Blue Mosque, the Ortaköy Mosque, Dolmabahce Mosque, Topkapi Palace. What's the other one called? Dolmabahce Palace. Yeah, like the mosque, which is, they're right next to each other. And yeah, just there's a lot of interesting side streets to explore, especially in the what's the neighborhood called? Fuck, I've forgotten the name of it. Near Istiklal Avenue and nearby. I think it's Beylogu area. I forget the name, but it's like the area north of the Golden Horn. Has a lot of interesting side streets and kind of European looking architecture, but there's also a lot of like Middle Eastern looking architecture also, specifically some of the mosques. Well, they kind of have that Byzantine style that's like a mixture of Persian and Byzantine influences. So it's very interesting, very eclectic, very unique city. Hopefully, it won't all get destroyed by an earthquake. That's the big concern right now. So I guess go there while you still can. Fuck. But yeah, Istanbul. There's really nowhere else like it. And yes, I have. Okay, I've not been to Cape Town or Rio. I have been to New Orleans. I have been to Istanbul. I actually went to the top 3 cities on this list in the same year, all in the same year in 2023. So yeah, Istanbul is number 2 on this list. Well deserved. Number 1 is Naples, Italy. Now, I did not do a video specifically on Naples, even though it's number 1 on this list. My experience in Naples was somewhat dampened literally by the fact that it was raining like a motherfucker the entire time I was there. It's probably the worst weather I've ever had in any city I've ever been to, except maybe the first time I went to Vienna. That was actually me and Argent went there. We did a trip there together like 11 years ago. And yeah, it was raining the entire time in Vienna. Also, thankfully, though, I did get to go to Vienna a second time with my dad. And that was great because he has Austrian heritage himself. Like his father was from Austria. So it's great that we got to go there together back when he was still alive. And yeah, that was a great trip also. But Vienna's not on this list because it's a beautiful city, but it doesn't have the vibe that I'm talking about in this list. But yeah, just a side note. But yeah, Naples is number 1 on this list because I think it's the most interesting city. It has a very unironically vibrant kind of vibe to it. Like it's very alive, even in the rain. Very beautiful architecture. Very narrow streets, very gritty vibe. Like I've talked a lot about these like gritty Mediterranean port cities on this list, but I think Naples is the grittiest of all. It's also the dirtiest of all. I'm just going to warn you. There's a lot of graffiti, a lot of broken glass, a lot of litter. Oh my gosh, the garbage in some places is just disgusting there. The piles of garbage. But nonetheless, like Naples has a very unique charm to it that's very specific to it. I think it would probably be more charming without so much garbage and graffiti and litter. But like, nonetheless, I can't deny it's the grittiest city in Europe. It's it's very authentic feeling. Like it feels unabashedly, unapologetically Southern Italian. And it's a place where it's like, the McDonaldization of Europe, I think, is less strong there than anywhere else in Europe. And the globalization, it's a place that's like aggressively inoculated against globalism because its own culture is so strong. And like, yeah, the downside of that is the garbage and the litter and all that shit. But the upside of it is that it feels the least fucking Americanized of any European city, probably. I even got called as a slur Americani by a woman there because I I said no parlo italiano. And then she's like, no parlo Americani. And it was kind of funny. Like, so yeah, they're very aggressively inoculated against globalism and Americanism, which is part of its charm, that it's so aggressively Neapolitan. Like Naples is Naples is Naples. That's one great thing I will say about the city. It's not becoming globalized or bogmanized or Americanized or multiculturalized to the extent a lot of places in Europe are. Naples very much still feels like Naples, for better and for worse. But yeah, it's great pizza, amazing pizza. I had so much pizza there. Just a gorgeous architecture. My gosh, I just wish it wasn't fucking raining the entire time when I was there. Like, good gosh, I went in like the worst fucking. It was in May, which is normally a beautiful month, but Italy was undergoing a lot of torrential rain at the time. Thankfully, for the rest of the trip, I didn't get that much of it, only sporadically. But in Naples, it was fucking constant. It was just rain, 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 and more fucking rain. So I would really like to go back there. Hopefully it won't be raining next time if I do get to go there again. But nonetheless, despite the rain, I explored. I was a real trooper. Like I fucking was like, no, you know what? I don't give a fuck how much it's raining. I want to see the city. And I walked around the city a lot. I explored the historic city, basically almost every neighborhood of the historic city. Despite the fucking endless rain. And I mean, it wasn't raining torrentially the entire time. It would be like sometimes it was raining torrentially, sometimes it was raining like drizzle. Occasionally it would not be raining, but I would say it was raining like at least 80-90% of the time I was there. Um, but yeah, some parts of the city do feel very sketchy, whereas some parts they feel gritty but not as sketchy. I would say the parts of the historic city that feel the sketchiest are toward the main train station, the Garibaldi train station. Some areas near the train station feel very sketchy. I would say where the most famous pizza restaurant, the Antica Pizzeria di Michele, everything between there and the main train station feels quite sketchy, but still historic. And areas immediately north and south of that. There was one historic town square where there was a bunch of like young Italians who were all like doing wheelies on motorcycles. It felt like a scene from like a Fast and Furious movie or something like that. They were just all going around on motorcycles doing wheelies and stuff. I was wondering, are these guys, are they Camorra? Are they mobsters, like mobster kids? They might be, who knows? But yeah, that's what I saw happening there. And again, for better, like again, that kind of thing, it's like it's kind of cool to see, but it would annoy the shit out of me if it was like people doing that in the middle of the night. I actually did have some guy at the hotel where I was staying, which wasn't in the city of Naples, it was in Pompeii. And some guys, for some reason, they felt the need to set off fireworks every night at 11:15 a.m. It was so fucking annoying. I complained to my hotel about it. Actually, it stopped after I complained, so who knows? Maybe they gave them a talking to about this, or maybe it just stopped coincidentally. But oh my gosh, that was the most annoying fucking thing ever. I don't know why they were doing this. I know in the TV show Gomorrah, they use fireworks to announce that it's a drug dealing spot. So it's like, is that what was going on there? I don't know. By the way, the show Gomorrah, I would sort of recommend it, but it's not the best show ever. Like, I think as far as mob shows go, The Sopranos is way better. Gomorrah's all right, but every character is fucking detestable and you'll absolutely hate them. It's not like Tony Soprano, who has some redeeming qualities. Like, he's at least funny and he has at least has moments of like clarity and profound intellectual insight and stuff like that. Or even like the other characters in The Sopranos, like even fucking Ralph Cifaretto, who's a complete piece of shit, can be funny sometimes. Gomorrah's not like that. It's not funny. It's not memeable. It's just flat out, the people are just flat out despicable pieces of shit. It's kind of a bit like City of God in that regard. But yeah. So I don't know if I would recommend it. Maybe, maybe not. Also, I think it's exaggerated. There's no way that many people die in Naples because their murder rate isn't even that high. Like, their murder rate is like lower than like almost any American city. It's probably lower than most major Canadian cities at this point. I don't buy that there's that much death in the mob in Naples these days. Maybe there was a few decades ago, but not now. But I don't know. Gennaro Savastano, I've never wanted a character in a TV show to die as much as I wanted him to die. I just wanted his like fucking brutish, gorilla looking fucking monkey ass to be beaten to a bloody pulp. I have never wanted a TV character to die as much as I wanted him to die. And I wanted him to die slowly and painfully. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that TV show as a complete aside. But yeah, I'd recommend going to Naples more than I'd recommend watching the show Gomorrah. Same as with New Orleans versus the show Treme. I kind of watched both of them for the same reason, because after I'd gone to the city, I wanted to watch the show based on the city. And in both cases, I felt the city was better than the show. But yeah, not terrible shows. But yeah. Yeah, I went to both those cities in 2023 as well as Istanbul, and then I watched both those shows in 2024. So yeah. Um, but those are my thoughts on those cities. So yeah, I think Naples is the most interesting city in the world, the most gritty city in the world, perhaps. Well, actually, not the most gritty. Let me put it this way: the most gritty city that is also architecturally beautiful. The only other ones that are architecturally beautiful that could possibly be grittier might be like some of the cities in Morocco or Tunisia, perhaps. But those don't interest me as much because I don't know. I guess because they're just entirely non-European in their heritage, and I'm more interested in places that are like entirely or partly European in their heritage because that's my heritage. But yeah, I mean, Morocco and Tunisia would probably be interesting too. I've just never been there, and I'm not as personally interested in it. But again, like, there's plenty of cities in the world, in the Middle East, North Africa region especially, that I think would also be interesting, especially like Morocco and Tunisia, because they're better preserved there. But again, it's just not as interesting to me personally. And same with many parts of Latin America that are just don't have as much of a European heritage as, say, Buenos Aires does. They might be interesting too, but it's just not as interesting to me specifically because they're very much more like, mestizoized, Latin Americanized as opposed to like European seeming. But yeah, those are the cities that I find most interesting in the entire world.